asking Huda to do that, but then you see your fan base being very anti-Black and being xenophobic towards Shelley. I had to divest from that. Sorry, that's my stance.
Well, for one, that was her officially divesting from Alandria. It's a crazy standard to hold Olandria up to. So yesterday I posted a video about some of Jessie Woo's gross comments about Nic's friend, and there seemed to be some confusion in the comments, thinking that Jessie Woo has always been a big supporter of Nic and Olandria, but that's just not the case. While she might have been a big fan of them while the show was actually airing, since the show has ended, she has bent over backwards trying to defend Shelley, but in doing so, she has thrown Olandria under the bus many times, blaming Olandria's friends, and kind of just all around holding Olandria to a far different standard than she is holding Chelley and Ace. So I thought today I would happily give more context on why Nic and Olandria fans are not buying what Jessie Woo is selling or trying to sell now with the video about how she still supports Nic and Olandria after months of saying the opposite, or more importantly, her actions speaking louder than her words, which will be a big part of today's video, a big subject in today's video. I want to give full context by going back to when Love Island USA Season 7 ended and how Ace was not going on interviews with Shelley. He didn't want to do the mainstream interviews, which at the time he was probably upset about his edit on the show. So maybe that was his excuse. But it also came across as him not being very supportive of Shelley, especially when pictures like this were taken with Nic supporting Olandria and Ace nowhere to be found with Shelley. But then right after those mainstream interviews, that is when Ace decided to talk to Speedy and try and throw all the shade onto Nic and Olandria, who, by the way, had been very supportive of Shalley and Ace.
Ace and Shelley's relationship.
Honestly, I see them going all the way.
I do want to say that right after the season ended, Olandria was definitely very supportive about Shelley and Ace's relationship, so that when Ace did go on that podcast and threw shade at their relationship and playing into all of the hate that they were getting, that they were a fake relationship, it's no wonder that backlash came. But let's go back to that time.
Do you feel like Olandria and Nic's relationship is real? Is this you thinking, or is this your answer? I'm going to assume that that's your answer.
Now, I like to try and be fair and balanced here, so I do want to point out that right after this interview with Ace dropped, Jessie Woo definitely called Ace out on some of his bullshit with the way he acted in the interview.
Ace has a problem with not being liked. Ace has a problem with not being the fave. Him coming out this villa and not being the fave is killing him softly.
But that is also important context because Jessie certainly switched up from those thoughts. Now, of course, after Ace did that interview and Nic and Olandria, the hate about them being a fake relationship doubled in size. Ace certainly played a part of that. He was basically giving proof to some of these other fan bases like Huda stands that hated on Nic and Olandria. This was Ace giving them more reason to do that. But of course, when Ace did that interview, a lot of that also fell back onto Shelley, and Shelley and Alandria are supposed to be these friends coming out of the show, and Shelley did not speak up against Ace's interview. And so, of course, a lot of Nic and Olandria fans came at Shelley, questioning her about why she is staying quiet. Does that mean that she agrees with what Ace is saying? Well, Jessie Woo decided to put herself in the middle of this and started to, I guess, in her mind, the hate that Shelley was getting was worse than the hate that Alandria was getting, I guess, because it was at this point that she started holding Alandria to a different standard than Shelley and Ace. Many suspect that it's because she probably did see some comments about, I guess, hate towards Shelley being Haitian, like Jessie Woo. They have that in common. And so she decided that those comments from Olandria fans, or Nic and Olandria fans, spoke for the entire fan base, even though you could see many fans from the Chelley and Ace fan base going after Alandria for being with a white man, calling her things like a slave. So there was definitely hate on both sides, but I guess Jessie Woo didn't see that as bad. She only saw the hate against Shelley, and it was at this point she decided that she was going to be the ultimate Chelley and Ace PR manager. So of course Nic and Olandria fans would call her out on her, I guess, bias or hypocrisy, saying things like Jessie Woo says she unfollowed Olandria. Nic and Olandria fans made good points about how Jessie Woo says she unfollowed Olandria because she saw how some of her fans were being nasty towards Shelley, but she had no reason to unfollow Shelley when some of her fans were being nasty and anti-black towards Alandria. They're calling out the bias here that only furthered the divide. And since this point, she, despite knowing and calling it out when Ace's interview first dropped, knowing that he probably did the wrong thing by throwing shade on a different relationship, she started to defend Ace as well. And, you know, one can say that maybe Ace was attacking Nic in that podcast and not attacking Olandria.
Last conversation that I've had with, Nic, it was a matter of it's not a romantic spark. They just, you know what I'm saying? They find each other attractive.
But because of Ace's actions, hate was getting thrown at Olandria as well, just like because of Ace's actions, hate was getting thrown at Shelley as well. Anyway, in a lot of her lives, Jessie started pinning top comments about how Ace was right on his podcast when it came to Nic and Olandria. This was her playing into Nic and Olandria being a fake thing. Now, the biggest part of this for me, and when I started to see that Jessie Woo was doing the most, I guess you can say, was when the whole thing with Huda and her boyfriend laughing at Alandria being called a slur on one of their lives came out.
Whoa, hey.
When that came out and Alandria posted how she was hoping that Huda can take responsibility for her actions, even though she probably wouldn't do that. She would just do some half-assed apologies and then move on, which is exactly what happened, because that is who Huda is that's just run from the way we really are, even though we are problematic. Well, I will say, I'm not going to sit here and say that Jessie Woo did not read Huda like she should have been read, but in that same video, for no reason, Jessie Woo brought up Shelley in that video, and once again held Alandria to a different standard.
Her say anything negative about Shelley, but for me, it's when you are asking Huda to do that, but then you see your fan base being very anti-black and being xenophobic towards Shelley, who didn't say anything, and you don't say anything. I had to divest from that. Sorry, that's my stance.
Well, for one, that was her officially divesting from Alandria. She said that with her own mouth. But it's also her holding to Alandria to this crazy standard, because on one hand, she stopped holding Ace accountable for his actions on the podcast. That was the reason Shelley had any blowback in the first place. But she also defended Shalley when Shalley didn't respond to Ace's comments and stick up for Olandria. But now because Olandria, who knows Huda, who spent time with Huda, who thought Huda was her friend when they first left the show, and she's hoping Huda can be responsible for her own actions. But Jessie Woo wants to call out Olandria for not being able to hold her fan base for their actions. She's expecting Olandria to hold accountable millions of people, or pockets of millions of people, because they're not all the same. It's a crazy standard to hold Olandria up to when she can't hold Shelley to, speaking out against Ace, but whatever.
That's where I stand on that. If we're going to require Huda to speak on anti-Blackness, racism, but we're going to stand by while our fan base is xenophobic towards Shelley, sorry, I can't support that.
I actually think this is one of the worst takes I saw on that Huda situation. And I didn't see all the takes, so I'm sure there could have been worse takes out there. But this take to be upset that Olandria wants to hold Huda accountable for her own actions, and her saying that that's basically the same as Olandria not holding millions of fans responsible for their actions, is actually quite an insane standard to hold Olandria up to, when at the same time you're not doing the same thing for Ace and Shelley, because their fans have had plenty of hate towards Nic and Olandria. In fact, they are the main ones responsible for that new Love Island USA subreddit that just is there to hate on Nic and Olandria, which we're going to get back to here in a second. Let's listen to one more thing she had to say.
I know that this is months back, but I know that the Ace interview didn't sit well with a lot of people. But it just also was very weird for me to watch people use what Ace said to attack Shelley.
But people were using what Ace said to attack Olandria and Nic. And that was the problem. Ace was the problem. But Jessie decided that in order to stick up for Shelley, she also had to stick up for Ace. Now, I don't want this to be an attack on Shelley videos. Shelley did speak out after Huda's bullshit. But since all of that, since there's been months now of Jessie Woo divesting from Olandria and her fan base and wanting nothing to do with that because Olandria can't get her fans to be responsible for their own actions, even though Shalley said nothing to Ace to be responsible for his own actions. One person she actually knows, not millions of fans, where there is pockets of problems. That's when Jessie Woo came out with this video because of Ace and Shelley's breakup. So after months of throwing all of the shade onto Olandria and Nic, she makes a video when Chelley and Ace break up that includes the Nic cheating rumors. Now, people in the comments yesterday were talking about how Jessie Woo was just commenting on a video that started all the rumors. That's not the Steph with the Deets woman, who is just as nasty as Jessie. That didn't start with her. And she deleted her video in like an hour because she got so much blowback. That came from that subreddit I've been talking about the last 2 weeks that has been made just to hate on Nic and Olandria, because the main subreddit had too much love for Nic and Olandria, and other fan bases, specifically Shalley and Ace, felt like they weren't getting enough attention on the main subreddit, so they had to make a new subreddit. That's where the rumors about Nic and his friend in a picture that was taken before Love Island started to take off. Soft and Spicy in the comments yesterday had one of the best comments on this situation, saying Jessie Woo is using doublespeak. She has a journalism degree. She knows exactly what she's doing. She platformed a false rumor to her larger audience so she can look like she's defending Nicolandria while being shady for even bringing it up when the hot topic is Shalley and Ace breaking up. And that's exactly what she did here. Because she went so hard for Shalley and Ace over the past couple of months, Their breakup video also had to be about Nic's false cheating rumors. She gave a bigger platform to those rumors than anyone else. These were not mainstream rumors like the Shelley and Ace breakup. The only other person to talk about the rumors in a negative light was that Steph with the deets person. But here's Jessie Woo bringing that up to her audience to still make Nic get some possible hate. I also think there's probably more to that too. I think now that Shelley and Ace have broken up, according to Shelley, she does want to jump back onto the Nic and Olandria bandwagon, so she has some content to talk about. Either way, her bringing that up in a Shelley and Ace video was shady, and so that's why people have called foul to her joke on Nic's friend about how they're basically running a train on Nic's friend, has made people disgusted with that commentary. And yes, I know in the video I had people in the comments saying, in the video she did say that the woman is dating a friend of Nic's, but she still felt the need to make that joke and do her best cringy Stephen A. Smith impression.
I don't give a damn if Nic and his best friends are taking turns with this bitch. I don't care. We don't care. I'm here to tell we don't care.
When she has warred against the Nic and Olandria stands on social media for months now. Of course they're going to feel some type of way that she's bringing all of this up in a video that's supposed to be about Shelley and Ace's breakup. Her people, the people she chose to side with, that should have never been a thing. People should have never had to take sides in a fan base war, but that was Ace's doing. Nic and Olandria have never talked shit about Shelley and Ace. Ace has. And she always uses the fact, well, Shelley has never talking shit about Olandria and Nic. To her recognition, she's never seen that happen. But Ace did, and Shelley said nothing about that. And she decided that she had to also start defending Ace just to defend Shelley. And now those two have possibly broken up. And yeah, she was messy with that video. She knew what she was doing. Soft and Spicy was right in the comments. And this was the timeline as to why Nic and Olandria fans are not buying that she is still a Nic and Olandria fan when she said with her own mouth she wants to divest from it. She can't support Olandria anymore. She's unfollowed Olandria months ago with this whole situation that Ace caused. Olandria never caused it. Ace caused it.